A Fianna Fáil Senator says that the media should not have to give equal time to both sides on issues like climate change, even during a referendum campaign. This is Ben Scallon and you're watching Gript Media. Anyone with even a cursory knowledge of history will likely remember the story of Galileo and the Church. As we all know, after astronomer Galileo Galilei had a political falling out with the Vatican in the 1600s and insulted the Pope, he was put under house arrest in part for his controversial claim that the Earth went around the Sun rather than the other way around. There was virtually total consensus among the scientists, universities, and academic experts of the time. This Galileo guy was evidently a heretic, not to mention an ignoramus and a clown. Of course the sun goes around the earth, they said. Only a fool would say otherwise. Now, today most of us would find this horrifying. Just because someone has a minority opinion, particularly in an area of science, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. We all acknowledge that people with differing views should be heard out in case they've spotted something that the rest of us haven't. We all acknowledge that, unless, of course, you're Senator Malcolm Byrne. In the Seanad, Byrne expressed the view that it would not be, quote, appropriate for a public broadcaster to give equal time to both sides on an issue like climate change, even during a referendum campaign.
I think there are challenges, and I appreciate the challenges broadcasters face, because I also think one of the challenges has to be around things like the McKenna judgment, where you have to give equal weight during particularly a referendum to two sides of an argument. And I have a bit of a problem with that. I have no problem where equal weight is given to evidence-based arguments on two sides. But if, for instance, we say have a referendum in the future about tough measures to deal with climate change, I don't believe that it's appropriate that our national broadcaster should be giving 50% of space to climate skeptics on some of those.
Bear in mind that a climate skeptic is not even someone who doesn't believe in climate change per se. According to Collins Dictionary, a climate skeptic is simply someone who does not believe that changes in the Earth's climate risk environmental catastrophe. So in other words, you could fully believe that climate change is real and even that it may do some harm to the planet. But if you're not totally hysterical about it and think that it will cause a global disaster of apocalyptic proportions, then you are a climate skeptic and apparently you shouldn't be given equal airtime to others. Comically, Byrne also adds that he would still like to have a, quote, meaningful debate on the issue.
I think it's appropriate that we have, a meaningful debate around our approach to addressing some of those issues.
How exactly one can have a meaningful debate on an issue where the opposing position is excluded or given a fraction of the speaking time is a mystery, but there you go. And note that he also says this should even apply to referenda campaigns. So in other words, people should go to the polls and vote on major constitutional changes with one entire side of the debate either totally omitted or given much less airtime deliberately. The kind of debates that Byrne seems to want appear to go as follows. How panicked about climate change should we be? Hysterical or inconsolable? How many Ukrainian refugees should Ireland take in? 100,000 or 200,000? How quickly should we integrate with Europe? Rapidly in a few years or slowly over a decade? He sets the acceptable range of discussion, having eliminated one entire side of the conversation, and then he allows people to argue about whether they agree with him entirely or just mostly. Now that's a functioning democracy if I've ever seen one. After this clip naturally went viral for all the wrong reasons, Byrne said that, quote, an anonymous online troll is presenting an edited clip from a lengthy contribution, effectively denying that he had said any such thing. But we have the transcript of his full speech on Oireachtas debates, and the full video is also on the video archive. You can see exactly what he said for yourself online. Feel free to view or read this in full and tell me if it's taken out of context or edited in any way. I'm also not sure how exactly it's considered trolling to take a clip of a government politician speaking in the Oireachtas and post his views in his own words, but anyway, that aside, in his speech, Byrne also referenced the Good Friday Agreement as an example of an issue which should not be given equal airtime.
Issues like, on the Good Friday Agreement, where there was overwhelming support among all of the political parties, and yet equal space has to be given to fringe dissident groups. And I think we do need to possibly, in that light, revisit the McKenna judgment.
Now, I have no particular gripe with the Good Friday Agreement myself, but the standard here seems to be that the opinions of what Byrne views as, quote, fringe dissident groups should never be seriously entertained or given a balanced hearing out on the news. Only things that the majority of establishment politicians already support, i.e. the status quo, should be given full airtime. So the implicit assumption in this is that whatever the majority of politicians currently want is always right. So, for example, when slavery abolitionists like William Wilberforce were in the minority, they should have been given much less time and space in the papers by Malcolm Byrne's logic, because most politicians at that time agreed that slavery was great and Wilberforce was only a, quote, fringe dissident. The same could be said for Irish independence from Britain, or a whole host of other views which started off as unpopular and then ended up being much more persuasive down the line. Or take Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian scientist who pioneered germ theory in the 1800s and said that doctors should wash their hands before medical procedures. He was roundly mocked and ridiculed by his peers and was a minority of one at one stage. Given Malcolm Byrne's logic, he should have kept his fringe dissident opinions to himself. Now, you might say that these are hyperbolic examples, but the point is, not one person alive knows what the absolute truth is. Not the Pope, not the British Prime Minister, or the President of America, or indeed Senator Malcolm Byrne. None of us knows for certain what is true and what is false. Human beings are fallible. We have limited knowledge and understanding of the universe. We don't have access to all the facts on any given issue. And that's why we have debate. That's literally the entire point of discourse. If any one person knew what the absolute truth was, then we could just do away with discussions altogether and elect that person dictator for life. Debate would be made totally redundant. But that's not the situation we're in, is it? Societies have been radically wrong before, as have scientists and quote-unquote experts. Just look at COVID-19 and the insanely inaccurate predictions and modelling from our specialists and PhDs. They almost couldn't have gotten more objectively wrong if they tried. The more our politicians come out with statements like this, the more clear it becomes that they have an instinctive authoritarian streak and they don't believe even in the fundamental principles that underlie free speech at all. Please like and share this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider signing up for a monthly donation via the link on screen to help us produce more content like this. Alternative media like Gript needs all the assistance it can get, and every donation goes a long way. As always, thanks for watching.